arguments, all is not lost. You can still call him vile names. Elbert Hubbard. Hubbard, who wrote a book called Jesus Was an Anarchist in 1910, and then was killed when the Lusitania was torpedoed in 1915, seems quite appropriate to quote in opening up today's episode of History, She Wrote. Because today, instead of examining the actions of nations and armies, we'll take a look at business, specifically American Airlines, and the resurgence of the derogatory term gate lice. Now, quick note here, American Airlines does not officially use the term gate lice, which, according to the site AZ Central, refers to a pejorative phrase that refers to airline passengers who crowd at an airport gate before their group is called. The term supposedly originates from a 2005 post on the online discussion forum Flyer Talk. However, in the numerous articles referring to American Airlines' new public shaming policy of those trying to board early, the term gate lice is loud and proud in the headlines. And we all know that businesses would never use a pejorative term unofficially and when they think no one is listening, right? But there's a problem with this vast proliferation of the use of the gate lice term. And it's that historically, referring to other human beings as a sort of vermin has not had good results. For the sake of not rehashing tired arguments, we can go ahead and skip over the most famous historic example of referring to other humans as vermin. Luckily for those studying the situation, mass movements have long had a long and rich history of using the vermin argument. As stated by Lisa T. Saracen in her book, Getting Under Our Skin, The Cultural and Social History of Vermin, vermin are a prism through which we look at other people, generally downward. People congregating in the boarding area are below those calling them gate lice. Point number one. And you can't feel superior to someone below you unless others know they are below you. Point number two. And this is how the name calling begins. In Rwanda in 1994, the genocide which would claim the lives of 800,000 people in just over 100 days was kicked off by referring to Tutsis as cockroaches. The retreat to classifying other humans as cockroaches wasn't an accident. It was incitement. Calling people pigs or goats or cows is rude, but there's a much bigger difference when using names associated with vermin. The difference is that we exterminate vermin. And extermination is exactly what broke out on April 7th, 1994. Lice as the verminous semantic vector has definitely been used before as well, famously by Oliver Cromwell in 1649 when, as legend goes, he punctuated his command of no quarter at the Battle of Drogheda with permission to kill the Irish in the city with the explanation, "Nits become lice." The slaughter was unimaginable and indiscriminate. The same phrase was also later ascribed to Colonel Shivington, who led forces which perpetuated the Sand Creek Massacre in Colorado Territory in 1864. In both cases, there is historical discussion about whether the exact quote was uttered, but what is undeniable is that in both cases, there was certainly a cultural practice of referring to the other side as lice to begin with. Humans had, throughout history, lived side by side with rats, fleas, lice, and other vermin. But as society advanced and cleanliness began to denote a more upper-class existence, the continued acceptance of vermin as a part of everyday life came to signify the lowest people on the social rung. And that morphed into not only being associated with vermin, but being classified as vermin as well. We generally try to avoid discussing anything within the last 30 years as history from Sarajevo to Red Africa, because a full accounting of more current events has not yet been written. But any internet search will pull up an overwhelming number of references to other humans as vermin, often by opponents on both sides of a particular issue. And so, if we're watching the rhymes of history unfold, not only is it uncomfortable to see it becoming more commonplace to refer to opponents or others as vermin, but the crisis spikes even more when the customers of a business are referred to in this manner, especially when the airline boarding policies and procedures are the ones causing people to crowd at the gate in the first place. There's no winning for people who can't afford business class and aren't in a wheelchair. The gate announcements are often incomprehensible. There's not enough seating. Everyone is worried about the amount of overhead space available, and the entire airline travel experience is so fraught with stress and dehumanization already that the people needing to get on board are primed to hover on the edge. This, I would venture to say, does not make people vermin. It makes them normal people responding to an extremely stressful situation, which promises to be inherently unfair to everyone involved. Not that American Airlines has any interest in listening to a frequent traveler, but perhaps if they had spent the money they blew on developing a public shaming system for people who might not actually have evil intentions, and instead of on a few more of those polls that show people where they can line up, and an announcement system that actually alerts people in a way that is easy to understand, they could have gotten a much better result for much less money, especially if they scrapped a system that tries to cram too many people into too small of a space and then force them to part with their luggage, which too often gets lost in transit. And it would have to be done without constant references to the very people who purchase the American Airlines product as vermin. O'Hare Airport is certainly not Drogheda in 1649, or Colorado in 1864, or Auschwitz, but it's not Disney World either. Quite frankly, Walmart has a better system for lining people up to pay. I'm sure American Airlines doesn't want to be known as the company who respects its customers less than Comcast, but here we are. At least Comcast doesn't cause its customers to be referred to as vermin.